So welcome to lecture 1 on interference and diffraction. So let's start with the introduction. So we discussed light. Because of the size of light, it can behave as two factors. It can behave as a ray and it can also behave as a wave. So we discussed the ray nature of light. Now let's discuss on the wave nature of light. So the science that deals with the wave nature of light is called as the wave optics. So we call it the wave optics. So because light can exist as a wave, there are some phenomena that cannot be explained by the ray nature of light. For example, I think the common example of this would to look at a disk. If you look at a disk, have you noticed that the disk does not have any pigments? And it is generally not colorless, but you do notice the colors at certain angles. Why is that the case? So why do you see colors? In the same way, if you take the example of bubbles, if you would have seen bubbles, so when you see bubbles, so these bubbles exhibit brilliant colors, but there is no pigments in soap. Then why are you able to see light? So these are phenomena that can occur due to one specific nature, the wave nature of light. So this phenomenon can be explained by the wave nature of light. So this is something that's similar to that of, if you remember, we discussed the topic of dispersion at the end of the lecture on refraction. It's similar to it, but not exactly similar. So let's see why is that the case. So we know that light is an electromagnetic wave. So we discussed that light is an electromagnetic wave. So it's a spectrum of waves that we call light. So light, when you want to calculate its speed, so speed can be written as frequency into wavelength. So frequency times wavelength. Now, so we know that C value here is a constant, which is 3 times 10 to the power 8 meter per second. And the frequency generally ranges from, the wavelength of light generally ranges from 380 nanometers to 760 nanometers. Remember that this is for visible light. So where you see on the lower end you see violet, on the higher end you see red. Right? So these are the frequencies at which you generally see these kinds of things. So understanding the nature of light itself can give us an understanding of how the waves can work. So we discussed that when light travels in different media, so it changes its velocity. Right? So the light itself can change its velocity depending on the medium in which it travels. So for example, if you have a medium of n, index of refraction n, so we know that we can write the velocity of light as c by n. So the velocity v represents the velocity of light in the medium. So v can be represented as c by n. So we know that c is equal to f lambda. So but I already told you that during one moving to one medium to the other medium, frequency is constant. So whatever the medium is, it doesn't matter, frequency is always constant. So What changes with here when you want to change the free equation? So V becomes F lambda by N. So V becomes F times lambda by N. So we can also write it as lambda N. So lambda N is written as lambda by N. So when moving between media, so light changes its speed by changing its wavelength. This brings up the question, how can light change its wavelength if it's a ray? So wavelength is a quantity that's specific to waves. So which means that understanding refraction can also be a good example of understanding how the refraction. So for example, a light that is traveling through glass would have lambda n values ranging from 285 nanometers to 570 nanometers. So when light changes, the wavelength changes. So when changing its, by changing its wavelength while keeping frequency constant. So it keeps frequency constant. It changes its speed by changing its wavelength. So this is how light, when it moves from one medium to the other medium, it changes its wavelength. So remember that colors do not change its wavelength, but the speed, the wavelength itself manipulates in such a way that it actually looks that way. So that's the idea behind light. So what would the wave nature of light look like? How would you visualize light? So waves in general are classified into two types. One is transverse waves and the other is longitudinal waves. Transverse waves are defined where the propagation of the wave is perpendicular to the motion, so or perpendicular to the vibration, let's call it that. Longitudinal waves is where the propagation of the wave is parallel to the vibration. So light waves are transverse waves, right? So they behave as transverse waves. One way of imagining light waves is transverse waves are also water waves. So water waves can also be described as transverse waves. So let's take a look at how a light wave generally looks like. So this is an example of how a light wave looks like. So when you look at it from the top, you see a darker region. You see a darker region and you see a lighter region. The darker region indicates the peak of the wave, or it's also called the crest, and the lighter region, the white region here, indicates the trough. So it also indicates the trough or the minimum inside the wave. So transverse waves look like ripples. So ripples of water is similar to how the transverse wave look like. How is it that the motion is perpendicular to the propagation? Notice that the propagation is this way, the wave is vibrating in this way. So because both are perpendicular to each other, that's the reason why we call these as transverse waves. So we call these transverse waves. Now one way we simplified the assumption of waves into rays by using the Huygens principle. So in Huygens principle we said that, when you take a wavefront, the wavefront generally has an origin point. So we consider the lines that are passing through that origin point as the ones that end up becoming the wave. So we said that we can approximate it as a ray. So the same idea works here. Whenever you take the wave principle and the ray principle, both of them do match and they also result in the same nature of light. So just like the ray nature explains reflection and refraction, wave nature can also explain reflection and refraction because of the same properties both of them have. But let's take the same consideration of the Huygens wave principle and apply it to two different types of waves. Let's take a simple experiment of considering how light waves travel through a doorway and how sound waves travel through a doorway. So when you look at light waves traveling through a doorway, so when you open a door with large amount of light, you notice that the edges of the light have straight shadows. So the shadow is straight. And when you look at sound waves are much more different, because even if you listen, you listen in the corner, you'll be able to listen to that sound. Why is this the case? So this property, where if you pass if you pass sound through openings, it generally creates the pattern where it ends up going to the edge, where it bends. So the light waves actually bend to the edge. But it looks as if light waves do not do that. Sound waves do that and light waves do not do that. Why is that the case? The reason mainly is because when you compare the wavelength of light and sound has a really large wavelength and light has a really small wavelength. That's why they generally create straight ray-like shadows. That's why you would think that it acts as a ray. But one another way we can visualize this is by imagining light passing through smaller and smaller holes. Let's say if you have a really small slit and you're letting light pass through those slits. So the smaller the slit, you notice that at the end the wavefront itself will bend in such a way that it can facilitate the movement of the waves to go outside the structure. And once you make the ray so small, where the slit so small that it ends up starting to go in a wave format, this here is how light travels through an opening. So this principle of bending of light through small openings is called as diffraction. So light, when it passes through slits, it bends at the corners through small slits. So this is called as diffraction. Right? So the official definition is the bending of light. So the bending of light or waves around edges of an opening or an obstacle is called diffraction. So the bending of light at sharp edges of an opening or an obstacle is called as a diffraction. So by this phenomenon, it's much more evident that light, rather than traveling as a ray, it travels as a wave. Because if it is a ray, it should have traveled this direction, it should have traveled like this, but rather it's trying to spread throughout the entire room, which means that it's not actually acting as a ray, but it starts acting as a wave. So light exhibits ray nature around large objects. Around small objects, it exhibits wave nature. So one of the first experiments that was conducted was to prove the phenomenon of, was to mainly prove the phenomenon of interference. So the main phenomenon was trying to prove the phenomenon of interference. So interference is where two waves try to combine together. So one of those experiments was Young's double slit experiment. So in this experiment, what we do here is we take light rays and pass it through two small slits. So we pass it through two small slits. If it was a ray, it would actually cause only two images to form on the screen. So on the screen here, you would only get two images, but rather you are getting multiple images. Why? So this is due to the phenomenon of interference. So this is due to the phenomenon of interference. So what happens during interference? So what is interference and what is the phenomenon of interference? So interference is the phenomenon of superposition of waves, or in simple terms we can call this mixing of waves. So when two waves mix, what happens? So this phenomenon in general, if you look at it, for example, you can try it at home, but if you try it with normal light, this phenomenon will not occur. With normal white light. So for this phenomenon to occur, you will have to use coherent light source. So it only occurs with a coherent light source. This brings up the question, what is a coherent light source? What is an incoherent light source? There are two types of light sources, coherent and incoherent. Coherent light source emits light in one direction. So emits light in one single direction with one wavelength. Incoherent light sources are the ones that emit a light in multiple directions with a random wavelength. So here you need light with only one wavelength. Most common example of a coherent light source is lasers, or an example of a coherent light source. You can take mercury sodium lamps, so mercury lamps, sodium lamps, all of these are examples of coherent light sources. So let's talk about interference now. There are two types of interference. So the first one is a constructive interference and the second one is a destructive interference. So let's start with a constructive interference. So constructive interference is where if you take a wave, so a wave in general has a height. This height is called as the amplitude. A constructive interference occurs when you have two waves of the same wavelength so waves you have two of the same wavelength and different amplitudes or the same amplitude, so it doesn't matter. So for example, let's consider that the amplitude here is x1 and the amplitude here is x2. In a constructive interference, both waves are facing the same direction at the start. So at the start both are coming in the same direction, so both are upward here, both are vibrating upward here, so they are starting upward and they don't have any phase angle between them, which basically means that there is an angle called phi. So phi is the angle difference between the point where it starts. So the angle difference between the two waves. So both are also traveling in the same direction. So there is a phase angle of 0. So what happens in constructive interference is that the two waves combine together and create a resultant with a higher amplitude. This amplitude or the resultant amplitude is the sum of the two original amplitudes. So when you take both the waves, so this is one wave and the other wave is also on it. So let's consider that this is the wave with x1 and this is the wave with x2. So the resultant wave will be a wave with a much larger amplitude combining both the waves. So this is the resultant amplitude which has an amplitude combining both the waves. So this here is called as a constructive interference. Let me draw it a little larger so that it looks better. So it results in the resultant amplitude. So this here is called as a constructive interference where two waves combine to create a wave of higher amplitude. Notice that there is no change in frequency or wavelength. So interference does not change the frequency or wavelength of the wave. It only changes its amplitude. So it either amplifies it. So if it amplifies, we call it constructive interference. Right, let's talk destructive interference. So what happens when you have a destructive interference in the same phenomenon here? So this is the first one, we talked about the constructive interference. In the second one, what happens here is that one wave has a direction that is upward and the other wave has a direction that's downward, which means that the direction in which they are starting is opposite to each other. When they are opposite to each other and have the same amplitude, the resultant amplitude becomes the difference between the two amplitudes. The resultant amplitude is the difference between the two amplitudes that results in a wave that's completely destroyed. So that's why the name destructive interference. So in a destructive interference, so there is a phase angle of 180 degrees, which means that they are actually opposite to each other, and when they have a phase angle of 180 degrees, they end up becoming completely cancelling each other out, resulting in the resultant amplitude being the difference between the two amplitudes. So this is the idea behind a destructive interference. Now, what happens when you have a double slit experiment? In the double slit experiment, what is happening here? So in the double slit experiment, if you notice that you see a bright band and you see a darker band. So bright, dark. So you see a series. So we see a series of light and dark bands. So the bands here are called fringes. So we see a series of dark and bright fringes. So let's take a look at how the interference looks like in the through the double slit experiment. So this is how the double slit experiment looks like in terms of the waves. Notice what is happening here is we take the darker line here So notice that this represents the peak and this represents the crest. So this represents the trough and this represents the crest. So wherever one wave's crest touches other wave's crest, we call that constructive interference. Wherever one wave's crest touches the other wave's trough, this becomes destructive interference. So we have a series of constructive and destructive interferences that are happening. So an example of that is to look at this example here. Notice wherever you see peak amount of blue, that representation here represents the idea of constructive interference. Wherever you see white, that's where you are seeing the difference there. So you have, when you plot the points of all the constructive interferences, so when you plot all the points of constructive interferences, you get a bright fringe. And when you plot all the points of destructive interferences, so all of these points are destructive interferences, you get a dark fringe. So you see a series of dark, white, dark, bright, dark, bright, and dark fringes. This is the reason why you end up with a series of fringes rather than having just two of them when they pass through the slit. Because when both waves of the same wavelength, when they come out, they end up with having the same amplitude. When they end up coming together, the constructive interference amplifies the light, causing it to be brighter. Destructive interference destroys the light. So, or let me call it, diminishes the light. To cause dark fringes. So that's why you see a series of white and dark fringes, with the brightest fringe being at the exact center between the 2 points. So this seems redundant, but just take a look at where the brightest fringe is and look at all the points where they completely combine with each other. So all of these points are representations of the maximum fringe or the brightest fringe of light, because it's not traveling too much because it's in the center. So the more they travel, the less brighter it becomes. So as you go away from the center, it becomes less and less bright, but the dark fringes stay darker and darker. So the more closer you are to the center, the more darker it is. So the more away from the center you are, the less darker it is. So this is where you end up seeing a series of, so the bright and then dark, bright, dark, this way. So this is the idea of the Young's double slit experiment, and how the Young's double slit experiment looks when you pass a series of light waves behind it. Let's take a look at the individual interferences of the waves. So each wave that is coming through, one wave that comes through at this point exactly, at this point was happening here. This wave has an upper one, the down wave has a lower one. So when both combine and hit, what happens here? This creates a straight line, so there is a dark fringe. And when you come to the same point, when two waves, when they come at this point, hit this point, one wave is like this, the other wave is also like that. So both of them combine and become darker. So they become brighter, not dark. So it creates a bright interference and a dark where we have destructive interference. Now one way of judging this is by creating a multiple value based on the angle at which they are bonding. So let's take a look at, notice that this is the wavelength here, and this is the angle at which the light wave is angle of the fringe point, so the point at where they are colliding. So when you take this value, so for a constructive interference, so the condition will be that d sine theta is equal to m lambda, where m is 0, 1, -1, -2 and so on. For a destructive interference, to occur, so the condition is d sine theta equal to m plus 1 by 2 times lambda. So m is equal to 0, 1, -1, -2 and so on. So you don't need to derive the formulas. This is out of the scope of the course. So I'm not going to derive the formulas for the course. So based on the idea here, if you want to calculate, d here represent the slit width. So d here represents the distance between the two slits, right? The distance, this distance is d here, right? So lambda here is the wavelength of light, and theta is the angle between the center and the horizontal axis, between the axis and the fringes. So this is the angle made by the fringes. So when you have a fixed wavelength and a fixed slit width, then we can write that sine theta is m lambda by d. So if m equal to 1, so we know that m equal to 1 represents the first bright fringe or the second bright fringe. So we can write that sine theta is equal to lambda by d. So one good use of this is, if you know the angle and the slit width, it's easy to calculate the wavelength. So this was one of the earliest methods of calculating the amplitude of a wave, the wavelength of a wave, based on the idea here. So let's say, for example, I have a problem here. Let's do some problems so that it becomes easier. So let's say I have a problem here. So let's try and solve this problem. Here they have given us, so suppose you pass light from a helium neon laser through two slits separated by 0.01 mm. Find the third bright line on a screen that is formed at an angle of 10.95 degrees relative to the incident beam. So what is the wavelength of light? So here it is given as d here is the slit width, the width of the slit width, that is d equal to 0.01 mm. Next they are asking you for the third brightest fringe, so m is 3, and they have given you the angle theta equal to 10.95 degrees. Now how to calculate this? So we have the formula d sine theta. Remember that here the fringe is the bright line, so the fringe is a bright one. So if it's a bright one, we know that it's constructive interference. So d sine theta now becomes m lambda. So m here is 3. Substitute the values. So you have 0.01 mm times sine theta, sine 10.95 degrees, is equal to 3 times lambda. So lambda becomes 0.01 mm times sine of 10.95 degrees over 3. So let's try and calculate this value. So if possible, use a calculator. It makes it easier to solve the problem. So you are looking for sine 10.95. So that value is 0.01 times sine is 0.18995. So when you multiply to this 0.01 divided by 3, that gives you an answer of that gives you an answer of 6.33 into 10 to the power of negative 4 mm. So lambda here is 6.33 into 10 to the power of negative 4 mm. But notice that this answer is in mm. We generally calculate length in nanometers or nanometers. So how do you calculate in nanometers now? So we are converting from mm into nanometers. So 6.33 into 10 power minus 4. Multiply nanometer by nanometer. So 1 nanometer, if you want to convert this into, first convert this into meter. So when you want to convert millimeter into meter, multiply 10 to the power of negative 3. So it becomes 10 power negative 7 meter. So if you want to calculate that, you can write it as 633 nanometers. So it's somewhere in the range of orange and red, right? Orange and red. So we can say that the light is having a color of something near orange and red, and it looks somewhat like this. So this is how you can calculate from the problems. So this is the idea here when you have a light and how the reflections look like. So this is the examples of interference. So let me give you another problem for practice. So now try this problem. Here they have given us the value of m. So the distance is d here. This is the value of theta. So use the form. Notice that they have said that this is a second order bright fringe. So it's still constructive interference. So use the values and try to find the answer. So pause the video right here and try to solve this problem.